I went to a job interview in a big office downtown. Halfway through, the interviewer suddenly asked, "Why did you really come back?" I told him I didn't understand. He smiled politely, ended the interview, and when I looked around the lobby, every employee I passed seemed to whisper the same thing under their breath. He's back. I had been preparing for this interview for weeks. It was a big opportunity. A position at a prestigious company downtown, the kind of job that could change everything. It wasn't just the salary or the title. It was the chance to feel like I was finally on the right path, the one I had been working toward for years. The office building was everything I imagined it would be, a sleek glass tower, cutting through the skyline. As I stood outside on the sidewalk, I had a moment of doubt. The kind where the air suddenly feels heavier, the concrete beneath your feet a little more solid, as if the weight of the world had shifted in that single moment. But I pushed it aside. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile as soon as I entered the lobby. The kind of smile that was both friendly and professional. Everything about this place screamed success, from the polished marble floors to the soft lighting that made the whole space feel both modern and welcoming. "Good morning," she said, handing me a visitor's badge. "Mr. Blackwood is expecting you. He's on the 15th floor. Just take the elevator to your left." I thanked her and made my way to the elevator. The ride up was quick, the elevator smooth and silent as it whisked me higher into the building. I glanced at my reflection in the polished metal doors and straightened my tie. This was it. When the doors opened, I was greeted by the unmistakable scent of new office furniture and freshly printed paper. The receptionist here was younger, more formal, and pointed me to the glass doors down the hall. I knocked and waited for the response. A deep voice called from within, "Come in." Mr. Blackwood was sitting behind an imposing desk, his sharp features framed by the sleek, modern office space. The large windows behind him offered a panoramic view of the city, the streets busy below, the sun just starting to dip toward the horizon. He stood and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Richard Blackwood." I shook his hand firmly, trying to keep my nervous energy under control. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Blackwood." He gestured for me to sit, and I did, settling into the chair across from him, which felt unnervingly comfortable. The interview started like any other, a discussion of my resume, a few questions about my previous experience, my goals, and why I wanted to work for the company. I answered confidently, trying to emphasize how excited I was for the opportunity. As I spoke, I couldn't help but notice the way he watched me. Not the usual polite attention, but something deeper, like he was studying me. His eyes seemed too sharp, too knowing. Then midway through the conversation, his tone shifted. "So," he began, setting his pen down on the desk and folding his hands, "why did you really come back?" The question caught me completely off guard. My mind froze for a split second as I tried to piece together what he meant. I'd never been here before. I had only applied for the job a few weeks ago. I didn't understand. "Excuse me?" I managed to say, trying to cover my confusion with a smile. He didn't smile back. Instead, his gaze sharpened. "You heard me," he repeated, his voice slightly softer now, but still probing. "Why did you really come back?" I shifted in my seat, my throat suddenly dry. "I don't understand. I've never been here before. I've only just applied for the position." He interrupted me, his smile almost polite, but there was something unnerving about it. "It's all right," he said. "I think we're done here. Thank you for coming in today." The sudden shift in mood left me reeling. I had no idea what had just happened. But I started trying to salvage the situation. I thought we were just going to discuss a few more. "No, that's all," he said smoothly, standing up and offering his hand again. "You'll hear from us soon. Have a good day." I stood and shook his hand, but as I left his office, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The whole interaction felt off. I couldn't explain it, but it wasn't just the abruptness of his dismissal. It was something about the way he had asked that question, his tone, his eyes. I walked out into the lobby, still trying to piece together what had just happened. My mind was racing. Why did you really come back? As I approached the elevator, I couldn't help but glance around the room. The employees I passed looked up at me, and I swear I saw a flicker of recognition in their eyes. One woman in particular, sitting at her desk, whispered something under her breath too quietly for me to catch. I stepped into the elevator, trying to brush it off. But as the doors closed, the strange feeling didn't go away. It only deepened. I left the building and stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, trying to clear my head. It was a simple interview, right? So why did it feel like I had just walked into something far bigger than I realized? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. I was probably just overthinking things. But as I passed the corner of the building, I overheard something. One of the employees was standing near the door, speaking quietly to another. "He's back." The words barely registered at first, but when they did, they hit me like a ton of bricks. I paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the sentence settle over me. "He's back." The whisper, repeated under their breath like a secret. The same words Mr. Blackwood had said. Back, what did that even mean? I spent the next few hours walking aimlessly around downtown, trying to shake off the nagging feeling that had settled into my chest. It was just a weird moment in a job interview, right? I had no reason to let it bother me, but I couldn't help it. Why did you really come back? The question echoed in my mind, repeating like a broken record. I tried to tell myself it was just some strange icebreaker or a test of character. But why had he asked it again, so pointedly? And why had he smiled like he knew something I didn't? I couldn't shake the words, "He's back." Who were they talking about? And why did they sound so familiar? I decided to walk around the city to clear my mind, but the more I tried to push it out of my thoughts, the deeper it seemed to sink into my bones. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone following me. Each time I passed a building or a street corner, I felt like I was being watched, even though there was no one there. The city felt different, empty even though it was full of people. And there was that phrase, "He's back," lingering in the air. Eventually, I made my way to a nearby coffee shop and sat down by the window, trying to focus on something, anything other than the interview. I opened my laptop, hoping to distract myself with some work. But the words kept coming back, crashing through my thoughts like waves. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how out of place everything had felt during the interview. Mr. Blackwood's behavior had been odd, but there was something else, something even more unsettling. It wasn't just the question, it was the way the whole office seemed to respond to my presence. It was like they knew me, but I didn't know them. That weird look, that fleeting moment when everyone stopped what they were doing, the way the receptionist's smile faltered. And then he's back. The phrase that had been whispered under my breath, the words I had overheard in the lobby. It wasn't just that they had said it. It was how they had said it, as if it were a secret, an acknowledgement. I needed to know what that meant, and I needed to know why it felt so familiar. After a few minutes, I closed my laptop. I couldn't focus on anything else. I had to go back. I had to find out what was happening, what was really happening at that office. The next morning, I decided to go back. I didn't even think twice. I had to. There was no other option. Something was pulling me back there, some unshakable sense that there was something I had missed, something I was supposed to understand. I wore the same suit, the same tie, the same everything, as if I was replaying the whole day, as if the office was expecting me, waiting for me, as if it had always been inevitable. The lobby was just as pristine as before, with the same marble floors, the same soft lighting, but this time there was a shift in the air. It felt colder. The receptionist barely acknowledged me as I walked in, just handed me my visitor badge and nodded, almost like she had seen me before. I took the elevator, but my hands were cold, clammy against the buttons. The door to Mr. Blackwood's office opened almost immediately, and the same man I had seen the day before greeted me with a thin smile. "Back again, I see," he said, his voice pleasant, but there was something off about the way he said it, like he was playing a role, and I was the only one who hadn't figured it out yet. I forced a smile and sat down in the chair, trying not to let the unease show. "Mr. Blackwood," I said, the words almost mechanical. I was hoping we could talk more about the interview yesterday. There was something that didn't quite sit right with me, and I just wanted to clear things up." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Of course, take your time. What's bothering you?" I took a deep breath. "When you asked me why I came back, It threw me off. I don't know why, but it felt like you were asking something more than just a question about my qualifications. He didn't react immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking to the side like he was considering his next words carefully. "It's a simple question," he said finally. "A test, if you will, to see how you respond to things that are unexpected." "But that's not what I meant," I pressed. "It was the way you asked it. It felt like you knew something about me that I didn't." He smiled, a thin, almost humorless smile. "I see," he said. "And how does that make you feel?" "It makes me feel like I'm missing something," I admitted. My voice sounded strange, distant, as if the room was closing in on me. Like I've walked into something I'm not supposed to understand. There was a long silence. Mr. Blackwood stared at me, but this time his eyes weren't as friendly. There was something darker there, something calculating. "I'm afraid I don't follow." "You're not just interviewing me, are you?" I said, suddenly bold. "This isn't just a job interview. This is something else. Something I can't quite put my finger on." He leaned forward, folding his hands together on the desk. "I think you're beginning to understand." His smile returned, but this time it wasn't reassuring. It was knowing. "You're not here for a job, not really. You're here because you came back, and now you have a choice." I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to speak. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Came back? What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "You'll figure it out eventually," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice smooth as ever, but now there was something almost predatory in it. "But until then, remember, he's back." I stood there dumbfounded, the weight of Mr. Blackwood's words sinking into my chest. "He's back." The phrase kept echoing in my mind, repeating over and over like some haunting refrain. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. I could hardly breathe. Mr. Blackwood was watching me carefully, his hands still folded in front of him, as if he were waiting for something, for me to finally catch on, or for me to break down and ask the question he was expecting. But I couldn't ask it. I was too lost in my own confusion. My thoughts were a jumble, spinning out of control. I had walked into this office thinking it was a simple job interview, just another step in the process of landing a new role. But now it felt like I had stumbled into something much darker, something much more dangerous. And yet, the strange part was, I couldn't bring myself to leave. Despite the anxiety clawing at my chest, despite the overwhelming sense that everything was wrong, I stayed. I needed to understand. I needed to know what was happening to me. What was happening here? I don't understand, I said, forcing the words out. My voice felt shaky, but I couldn't let that stop me. "What are you talking about? What do you mean I came back? I've never been here before. I don't remember any of this." Mr. Blackwood's expression softened, but only slightly. There was no warmth in it, just a quiet, unsettling patience. "You've always been here, haven't you? Whether you realize it or not." I shook my head, trying to dismiss his words, but the weight of them lingered. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're making no sense." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest, his eyes never leaving mine. "It's not about making sense, is it? It's about what you remember, or rather, what you're starting to remember." I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to argue. I wanted to get up and walk out, leave this strange office and never look back. But something kept me rooted to the spot. It was like my feet were stuck in place, as if the room had wrapped itself around me and wouldn't let me go. "You said I'd figure it out eventually," I said, trying to regain some control over the situation. "But how am I supposed to figure out something that doesn't even make sense?" His lips curled into a slight smile. "You'll know when the time comes. We all do. It's part of the process." The process. The words hit me like a slap to the face. The whole time, this wasn't just a job interview. This wasn't even about a job. It never was. I had been playing a part in some kind of game I hadn't even known I was a part of. Suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned toward the door, my hand reaching for the handle, but before I could make it, I felt something. It was like a subtle pressure, an unseen force that stopped me from moving forward. The sensation was so strong that it felt like the air around me was thickening, growing heavier with each passing second. "You can't leave yet," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice so calm, so composed. "Not until you understand." I turned back to face him. My heart was racing, and I felt a rush of panic building up inside me. I needed to get out of there, but at the same time, I was terrified that if I left now, I would never be able to make sense of any of this. The feeling of being trapped in this office in this moment became too overwhelming. "Understand what?" I demanded. "Why am I here? Why do I feel like I'm being pulled into something I don't remember?" Mr. Blackwood remained silent for a moment, just looking at me like he was waiting for something. And then, in a voice that was eerily soft, he spoke again. "You don't remember, do you?" His words were almost a whisper. "You don't remember coming here the first time, the second time. But you've always been coming back, haven't you? Over and over again." I felt like I had been hit by a truck. Coming back? What did that even mean? Before I could process it, he stood up from behind his desk and walked over to me, his movements slow and deliberate. He reached into his drawer and pulled out something, then handed it to me. It was a photo of me. It was taken in the exact same office, but I looked different, younger, more at ease. But what struck me the most was the date on the bottom. It was from 5 years ago, but I couldn't remember ever being there. "How?" I stuttered, trying to find my voice. "How is this possible? I don't remember this." "You will," he said cryptically. "The memory always comes back one way or another." I looked at the photo again, the confusion in my head threatening to overwhelm me. I knew I should feel panic, but there was something else there too. Something familiar. A deep sense of recognition. As if I had seen this moment before. As if I had been here before. I stared at Mr. Blackwood, unable to speak. His words felt like a fog rolling over my mind, clouding everything I thought I knew. But one thing was clear now. I wasn't just here for a job. I wasn't here by accident. I was supposed to be here, and that thought terrified me more than anything else. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I grabbed my things and left without another word, almost running to the elevator. But as the doors closed and I descended, my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of which made any sense. When I stepped out of the building and into the street, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I didn't know if it was the building itself, or if it was Mr. Blackwood, or if it was something else entirely. But I knew one thing for sure. I had come back, and I was starting to remember everything. I walked out of the building and into the street, but the city felt different now. The air around me was thick, oppressive, like I was carrying something heavy that I couldn't shake off. Every step I took felt like I was being pulled in some direction, towards something I wasn't ready to face. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone watching me, Mr. Blackwood, or any of the employees from the office. But the street was as busy as usual, the usual mix of people rushing about, absorbed in their own lives. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that they were all somehow part of this strange web I had stumbled into. The whispers were still echoing in my mind. "He's back." And now, it felt like they weren't just whispers from the people at the office. The words seemed to reverberate through the air itself, like the city was somehow in on it too. Like it had always been waiting for me to return. I didn't know what I was supposed to remember, but I knew I had to get answers. I needed to know what this was. Why did I feel like I had been here before? And why did everything about the office, the building, Mr. Blackwood, even the receptionist, seem so familiar? I didn't remember ever being there, so why was it so deeply ingrained in my mind? By the time I got back to my apartment, my thoughts were too tangled to make sense of anything. The familiar surroundings of my living room did little to soothe the anxiety pulsing through my veins. I dropped my bag on the floor and walked over to the window, staring out at the skyline below. The view was nothing special, just the usual cityscape, the hum of life continuing outside. But inside, I was anything but calm. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything was happening again. The strange sense of déjà vu had never been stronger. I tried to focus on something else, anything else, but it was useless. I couldn't stop thinking about that interview, and that question. Why did you really come back? My phone buzzed on the counter, breaking me out of my spiraling thoughts. It was a text from an unknown number. "We're not done yet. You'll remember soon." My heart skipped a beat, and I felt the color drain from my face. Who was this? I quickly typed back, my fingers shaking. Who is this? There was no immediate response. I stared at the screen, waiting for the reply. But after a few minutes, nothing came. Just as I was about to put the phone down, the message came through. It's happening now. It has always been happening. My mind raced, the words echoing in my head. It's happening now. What did that mean? Was someone watching me? Had they been watching me all along? I sat down at the kitchen table, my mind spinning. I needed to get control of myself. The phone was still in my hands, and my heartbeat was hammering against my ribs. I couldn't help but feel that someone was closing in on me, not physically, but mentally, like they were inside my thoughts. An hour passed. I tried to breathe. I tried to think about it logically, but the feeling of being trapped in something I didn't understand was overwhelming. It was like the world was beginning to fold in on itself, each piece of my life becoming more distorted. That's when I made the decision. I had to go back. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for answers to come to me. I needed to go back to the office, back to Mr. Blackwood, and demand the truth. Whatever was happening, whatever they were trying to hide from me, I was going to find out. I arrived at the building late in the afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the streets. The lobby was quiet when I entered. The receptionist was gone, replaced by a man in a suit, who barely looked up as I approached. I need to see Mr. Blackwood, I said firmly, trying to sound confident despite the storm of anxiety swirling inside me. The man looked at me for a moment, then nodded and gestured toward the elevator. Top floor. I took the elevator without hesitation. The familiar ding echoed in the quiet hallway as the doors opened, and I stepped into the sleek, modern office space. It was just like I remembered, too perfect, too polished. Mr. Blackwood's office door was slightly ajar, the same glass walls and elegant furniture within. I walked in without knocking. Mr. Blackwood was standing by the window, his back to me, staring out at the skyline. The moment I stepped inside, he turned around, his expression unreadable. "You're back," he said, his voice almost too calm, too measured. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked toward his desk, my feet moving of their own accord. I was tired of playing games, tired of pretending I didn't know something was wrong. "Why did you say that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you ask me why I came back?" His gaze shifted, just slightly. "You've come back before, haven't you?" I felt a cold rush of panic hit me. "No, I haven't. This is the first time I've been here." He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was knowing. It's always the first time until it isn't. I took a deep breath. "I'm not leaving until you tell me the truth. Why am I here? Why do I feel like I've done this before?" Mr. Blackwood didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured to the chair in front of his desk. "Sit down. You'll understand soon enough. You're here because you have to be." I sat down, my heart racing, my thoughts swirling. "What do you mean?" He took a step toward me, his movements deliberate. "You're not just here for an interview. You've never been just here for an interview. You were always meant to return. And now, you're finally starting to remember." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. What is this place? What is happening to me? He paused, his eyes darkening. "It's happening because it's always been happening. You don't get to choose when it starts, only when it ends." At that moment, the room seemed to shift. The air felt heavier. The walls seemed to close in. I had stepped into something bigger than I could understand, something beyond my control. And I realized, with a sinking feeling in my stomach, that I wasn't just an observer in this story. I was part of it. And it was just beginning. I sat there, frozen, as Mr. Blackwood's words reverberated in my head. "You're not just here for an interview. You've never been just here for an interview." I wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. My mind was spinning. I couldn't process what he was saying, couldn't make sense of the jumbled thoughts flooding my brain. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice strained. "What do you mean I've been here before? I've never been here before. This is my first time in this office." His eyes glinted with something I couldn't place, something dark and knowing. He leaned forward, resting his palms on his desk. You think this is the first time you've walked into this building? This is the first time you've remembered walking in, but you've been here before and you'll come back again. It's part of the cycle. I shook my head, the room suddenly feeling too small, too suffocating. I couldn't breathe. The cycle? What are you talking about? I felt my pulse quicken, the panic rising in my chest like a tidal wave. You're making no sense. I've never been here before. I swear it. What's going on here? What do you want from me? Mr. Blackwood's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't comforting. It was cold, calculating. What I want doesn't matter. What you need to understand is that you're here because you've been chosen. You've always been chosen. This is where you're supposed to be. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling on my shoulders like a lead blanket. Chosen? What did that even mean? You're part of something bigger, he continued, his voice steady. The company isn't just a business, and this office isn't just a workplace. It's a process, an experiment. I stared at him, not sure if he was serious or if I was just losing my mind. An experiment? I repeated, struggling to wrap my mind around the words. What kind of experiment? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, his gaze never leaving mine. He seemed to be weighing something, deciding how much to tell me. You're not the first, he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. You're part of a group, a project that's been running for decades. People come, they go, and they come back over and over again. Each time they forget, but not you. Not this time. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. What do you mean, forget? He stood up, walking toward the window, looking out over the city. I could see his reflection in the glass, his face half-shadowed, almost ghostly. Everyone here forgets, he said, his voice distant now, almost melancholy. Employees, candidates, everyone who walks through that door, they forget everything. The memories are wiped clean, but you... He turned back toward me, his eyes sharp again. You're different. This time, you're starting to remember. My head was spinning. I couldn't make sense of it. Remember what? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to the desk, pulling out a folder from the drawer. He opened it slowly, flipping through the pages until he reached a specific one. Take a look at this, he said, handing me the folder. I hesitated for a moment, my hands shaking as I took it from him. Inside were printed documents, forms I hadn't seen before, things that looked official but felt wrong. As I scanned the pages, something caught my eye. There was a picture of me, but it wasn't from my current life. It was from years ago, much younger, a version of myself I didn't recognize. The handwriting beneath the photo said, Emily, 6 years old. I gasped, flipping through the pages, each one showing a different version of me, different names, all crossed out, replaced with my current identity. Emily? That wasn't my name, it couldn't be. But there it was, written across the pages again and again. Why are these here? My voice was barely above a whisper. Who put this here? You did, Mr. Blackwood said simply. You signed these documents. You were part of this project before. You've been here before, over and over again, and each time you forget. But this time you remembered. I dropped the folder onto the desk, my hands trembling. This doesn't make any sense. I don't remember any of this. I've never seen any of these documents before. I've never been a part of anything like this. Mr. Blackwood's smile never faltered. You've always been a part of it, even if you don't remember. You signed up for it the first time. You just don't remember it yet. The words swirled around in my head, mixing with the panic that was threatening to overwhelm me. What had I signed up for? What had they done to me? I don't know what's happening, I said, my voice growing frantic. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just here for a job. I just want a job. Mr. Blackwood didn't move. It's never about the job, is it? It's always been about this cycle, the experiment. Experiment? I echoed, my voice cracking. What kind of experiment? He paused for a moment, his eyes darkening, as though he were considering how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. The experiment is simple. It's about control, about testing how much a person can forget, how much they can lose and still be the same, how many times you can come back and still be the person you were. I took a step back, my mind reeling. This isn't real. This can't be real. It's real, all right, he said, his tone even, almost clinical. The moment you walked through that door, you started remembering things you weren't supposed to remember. And now you're starting to see it, aren't you? The pieces coming together. I felt my chest tighten. I was suffocating under the weight of the truth that was unraveling before me. I was part of an experiment. I had been in and out of this office, in and out of this cycle, and I didn't even know it. Mr. Blackwood's smile widened. "Welcome back, Emily." His words were like a punch to the gut. "Welcome back, Emily!" I stumbled backward, feeling as if the ground beneath me had just disappeared. The room spun, the walls closing in on me. Emily? It felt like the name didn't even belong to me, like it was a foreign word being spoken to me for the first time. But why? What did it mean? Why was Mr. Blackwood so certain? Blackwood. No, this isn't happening, I muttered, shaking my head, trying to convince myself that everything I had heard was just a bad dream. The room around me felt like it was closing in, the air becoming thick, suffocating. This is just some kind of joke. I'm not Emily. Mr. Blackwood didn't move, didn't flinch. His eyes were as cold and unblinking as ever, as if he were watching me disintegrate and enjoying every second of it. "It's not a joke, Emily. You've been here before. You've been through this before. And you'll go through it again. This is how it works. It's always been how it works." His words didn't just fall on me. They felt like they were hammering into my skull, each one driving deeper, splitting apart the fragile world I had built for myself. "I don't know what you want from me," I whispered, feeling my voice tremble. "I don't know what this is." "This," he said, his voice a low murmur, "is your reality. And you've known it all along, even when you couldn't remember it. You're part of the cycle. Every time you come back, you forget, and we start over. But this time, you're remembering. This time, you'll get to see the whole picture." I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I was sinking under the weight of the realization. The walls seemed to close in on me, but I couldn't stop myself. "What do you mean by the whole picture? What's really happening here?" Mr. Blackwood didn't answer right away. He walked slowly around the desk, his eyes fixed on me, measuring every movement, every breath. "You've been part of this for a long time, Emily. You were chosen, not just for your skills, but because of who you are. And each time you come back, we see how much of you we can erase, how much of you we can take without breaking you." My heart raced as I tried to process his words. Chosen? Erased? What was he saying? Was this some kind of twisted social experiment, or was this something worse? I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but the fear in my chest paralyzed me. Every time I tried to think, another part of the puzzle clicked into place, and the pieces felt like they belonged to someone else, someone I didn't know, someone who wasn't me. I shook my head. "No, I don't believe you. This isn't real. You're just playing with me." "Am I?" His voice was quiet, almost soothing, like he was talking to a child who refused to understand something simple. "You've already seen the truth, haven't you? You've seen the photos? You've seen the records. You've seen what we've done." I felt a sudden chill run down my spine as his words sank in. The photos, the documents, the ones with the name Emily written over and over again. I remembered the image of that photo in the folder, the child who looked so much like me. But it wasn't just the photo that haunted me now. It was the words, the realization that the life I thought was mine, my name, my memories, my family, was all a lie. And the worst part was, I was starting to remember it. I was starting to remember the version of me that wasn't supposed to exist. I couldn't sit still anymore. I pushed myself away from the desk, pacing in the small space of the office. My mind was spinning out of control, grasping for something, anything, that would make sense of what was happening. "I don't understand," I whispered again, my voice breaking. "Why me? Why this?" Mr. Blackwood's voice was steady, but there was a glimmer of something more in his eyes now, something like satisfaction. "You're part of the experiment, Emily, and you've been part of it since the beginning. You were chosen because you were different, because you could handle it. But the thing about the experiment is, you can't escape. Not truly. You can run. You can forget. But eventually, you'll always come back." I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I processed his words, "always come back." Every time I thought I could break free from this, every time I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare, it always came back to this. Why? I asked, my voice barely audible, as if I were speaking to myself. Why would you do this to me? You were chosen because you're the perfect subject, he said simply. You've never really had control over your life. We've been shaping you, guiding you, but now, as you start to remember, you'll understand the bigger picture. You'll realize it's never been about the job. It's always been about you, about how much we can take from you, how much we can erase and still leave you whole. My mind reeled. The truth, his truth, was starting to collapse everything I had known. My life, my memories, my identity, it was all a facade. Nothing was real. I stumbled back from the desk, a rush of panic flooding my chest. You can't do this. You can't just erase people's lives. This is insane. Mr. Blackwood didn't flinch. It's not about erasing lives, Emily. It's about understanding them. We've been studying the human mind for years, studying how much we can take, how much we can twist, and how much we can forget. The cycle is part of the experiment, and this time you've come so close to breaking it. I felt dizzy. My legs were weak, and I collapsed into the chair behind me, trying to catch my breath. My hands were shaking. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't even know if I am who I think I am. You're Emily, he said, his voice steady, almost like a confirmation, and soon you'll remember everything. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady myself. No, no more. I don't want to remember. I don't want to be part of this. You don't get to choose, Mr. Blackwood said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You're already in the cycle, and you'll always come back. Sooner or later, you'll remember. And when you do, you'll understand. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Everything felt like it was suffocating me. The walls, the office, Mr. Blackwood's voice. The one thing I knew for sure was that I was never leaving this office the same. But what did that mean for me? I felt suffocated by the weight of Mr. Blackwood's words, each one dragging me further into the darkness of this twisted reality. It was like I was no longer in control of my own life. I was a pawn in some sick game, and the rules kept changing. Only the more I tried to understand, the more my memories slipped away, like grains of sand through my fingers. The streets blurred around me as I walked. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to be doing anymore. Every step felt like I was moving further into the unknown, like I was being pulled towards something I couldn't escape. The city felt unfamiliar, like I was walking through a shadow of my own life. The whispering had started again. It was faint at first, but the words came through, like a pulse echoing through my mind. He's back. I stopped, my breath coming in short bursts, my body frozen in place. I looked around, expecting to see someone, anyone, who might have said it. But the street was as empty as it had been moments before. I had always dismissed those little moments before, the ones that seemed too strange to be real, the way people would look at me in the elevator, the way the receptionist had handed me the badge with an almost knowing glance. The whispers, the name. Emily. It was like I had stepped into someone else's life, someone who was meant to be me. But the more I tried to convince myself I could forget, the more I realized I was already in it. I wasn't the one controlling the story. I was the character in someone else's plot. I was never meant to remember, but I did. The walk back to my apartment felt like an eternity. The city was alive around me, but it was all just noise, a backdrop to the storm that was raging in my mind. I didn't belong here. I had never belonged here. I had been a part of this before. I had walked these streets, had worked in that building, had taken that elevator and walked through the lobby again and again. Each time I had forgotten. They had made sure of it. The cycle, as Mr. Blackwood had called it. I wasn't just someone looking for a job. I had always been here in this place, this system, a piece in a much larger, darker puzzle. When I reached my apartment, I barely registered opening the door. The world felt distant, muffled, like I was standing outside my own life. I dropped my bag, and for the first time, I noticed the light was off. It had been on when I left. But I hadn't left the lights on. I had been too focused on the interview, too focused on escaping the office. But now, standing in the dim light of the room, I knew it didn't matter. The apartment wasn't mine. Nothing was mine. This was just another version of the same story. I walked toward the window, staring out over the city. The skyline seemed unreal, like it was suspended in some kind of dream. Why? Why was I stuck in this endless loop? What was I supposed to do now? Then I saw it. A reflection in the glass. It wasn't my own. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I looked closer, the reflection grew clearer. It was a figure standing behind me, tall, pale, wearing a suit. My heart stopped. I turned around sharply, expecting to see someone standing in my living room, but the room was empty. The reflection in the glass, however, remained. I stepped closer to the window, my heart pounding, my thoughts spinning. It's just a trick. It's just my mind playing tricks on me. But I knew it wasn't. I had seen this figure before, in the office, in the hallway, standing behind me. The face was familiar, but I couldn't place it. The same cold, dark eyes, the same knowing expression. I turned back to the window, and there it was again. The figure stood just behind me, watching, waiting. I ran. I ran out of my apartment, slamming the door behind me. I didn't stop, not even when I reached the stairs. I didn't look back, but I could feel it. The pull, the pressure, as if the entire building, the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for me to remember something. I found myself on the street, the chill of the night air hitting my face like a slap. The streetlights flickered overhead, but the city seemed strangely empty. The streets were quiet, no cars, no people. It was as if everything had stopped, just for me. Why is this happening? I needed to go back. I needed to face it. But where was it? What was it? Where was I supposed to go? What was I supposed to do? I stood there, on the edge of the street, the world around me feeling unreal. But somehow I knew I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one who had been part of this cycle. I looked up, my breath catching in my throat. There was a figure standing across the street watching me. The same tall, pale figure in the same suit, the same cold, unblinking eyes. But now I understood. It was me. I had never left. I had always been a part of this, a part of whatever dark game they were playing. The reflection in the window wasn't a trick of the light. It was me, watching myself, waiting for me to remember, waiting for me to face the truth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Something in me knew that I couldn't escape this. I couldn't escape the cycle. I had been here before. I had always been here. And now I understood. You're back, I whispered to myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back, to tear the world apart and demand my life back. But I couldn't. I was frozen. My body was there, but my mind was spiraling out of control. You don't get to choose, Mr. Blackwood repeated, his voice cutting through the fog of my thoughts. You never did. You were chosen from the beginning. It was always going to be this way. I wanted to run. I wanted to get up and leave, to get away from him, from the office, from everything that was happening. But the door was behind me, and I was so damn tired. Tired of running in circles. Tired of feeling like I was drowning. What do you want from me? I managed to choke out, my voice hoarse like I had been holding back tears I couldn't let fall. What do you want me to do? Mr. Blackwood smiled again, that same cold, knowing smile. I want you to remember, Emily. I want you to embrace what's already inside you, the truth. The truth? I echoed, my heart hammering in my chest. What truth? I've been living a lie. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're Emily, he said, his voice firm, almost tender in its certainty. And you've always been Emily. You've always been part of this. You've been here before, and you'll be here again. You've never really left. I slammed my fist down on the desk, my fingers digging into the cool surface as I fought to hold myself together. No, no more. I refuse to be part of this. I can't keep doing this. His gaze softened, but there was no pity in it, just that same, unshakable calm. It's already been decided, Emily. You can fight it as much as you want, but in the end, you'll come back. You always do. The cycle is inevitable. And when you remember, truly remember, you'll understand why. I stood up suddenly, my mind spinning. I couldn't listen to him anymore. I couldn't let him have control over me. The urge to flee hit me like a wave, and I turned toward the door, moving quickly, instinctively, like the only thing that mattered was getting out of that room, out of that building. But before I could reach the door, I heard his voice again. You think running will help? You think escaping will break the cycle? It won't. You'll just forget again. But the house will always call you back. The cycle never ends. I paused, my hand still on the door handle. His words felt like they were wrapping around me, squeezing the breath out of me. I didn't want to hear him. I didn't want to believe him. But something deep inside me, something cold and dark, told me he was right. This wasn't just about a job or an interview. This was something much bigger, something that had always been lurking in the shadows, just waiting for me to remember. I took a deep breath and turned back toward him, my hands shaking at my sides. "How do I stop it?" I demanded. "How do I end this?" Mr. Blackwood tilted his head slightly, studying me as if weighing my question. "You can't stop it. No one can. But you can choose how you face it. You can embrace your past, your real past, and take your place in the cycle. Or you can keep fighting it and keep forgetting. Either way, you'll be back here. It's not up to you." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I don't want to be part of this anymore," I whispered, barely able to form the words. "I just want to be free." He stared at me for a long moment, the silence in the room stretching out like a thread waiting to snap. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and final. "You will never be free, Emily. Not from this." The words hit me like a slap. I could feel the tears burning at the back of my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. I couldn't let him see me break. I turned back toward the door, my body moving on autopilot. I didn't look at him again. I didn't need to. I knew he was watching, and I knew I wouldn't be able to escape. I didn't know how long I walked. Time felt like it was stretching out, each step heavier than the last. The streets outside the building were full of people, but they felt distant, as if I was walking through a dream. The world felt wrong. I felt like a stranger in my own life, and the more I tried to shake it off, the more I realized it wasn't just a feeling. Something had changed. Something had shifted. I wasn't just caught in a cycle. I was a part of it, and no matter how much I wanted to escape, no matter how far I ran, I would always come back. The thought made my stomach turn, but there was no escaping it. It was like the world had turned upside down, and I had no control anymore. I needed answers. I needed to understand what had been taken from me, what had been erased. But the more I searched, the more I realized I wasn't sure I even wanted to know anymore. As I walked, the city around me began to blur. My vision seemed to swim, the lights on the street flickering like broken stars. The whispers started again, quiet at first, but growing louder. "He's back." I spun around, my heart thudding in my chest. But no one was there. It was just the street, the usual passers-by, their faces as blank as always. I couldn't run from this anymore. I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. It was part of me now, and no matter where I went, no matter what I did, the cycle would always pull me back.